Hello, I'm John Atkins, Managing Psychologist for Pern Candola and a specialist in selection and assessment. Getting the right people into the right jobs is hugely important to the long-term success of a business. Getting the right person can be transformative, and effective assessment and selection enables the creation of a highly productive, engaged and creative workforce. Get it wrong, however, and the implications can be huge. The financial costs associated with a poor selection decision can be up to 5 times the salary of the role you're looking to recruit into. Think about that for a moment. Poor selection into a 50 grand per year role may cost the business upwards of $250,000 to rectify. I've worked with many organisations across numerous industries over the last 15 years, and I'd like to offer you some of my top tips for making sure you get the right people into the right jobs. Tip number 1. Make sure you're looking for the right things. Whether you call them competencies, behaviours or values, it's important to ensure that you and others have a clear and consistent understanding of what good looks like. To say you are looking for teamworking or commercial leadership is too vague. It's open to interpretation, and different assessors will have a different view on what constitutes good, often basing them on subjective and potentially biased opinions. Instead, it's important to clearly define the behaviours that make up good commercial leadership, for example. Furthermore, such behaviours need to be clear, distinct, observable, and perhaps most importantly, inclusive of diverse cultures, backgrounds and perspectives. Think of it as the foundations to a house. Without solid, dependable foundations, anything built on top of them will fail. Which leads me on to tip number 2. Build a system that accurately and consistently targets the criteria that define success. Whether you use interviews, psychometrics, role plays, case studies, or a whole mixture of tools, your system needs to have a clear line of sight back to the competencies. If you're designing interviews, ask questions that seek to uncover evidence of past experience in the areas that matter. If you're developing assessment centres, create exercises that simulate real-life challenges and present opportunities to showcase an individual's skills in the criteria you know will enable success. Following such activities, take the time to classify and evaluate performance consistently against the competency framework. If the competencies are the foundations, the selection process is the well-designed, perfectly laid out house built on top of them. And finally, tip number 3, be aware of your own biases, conscious or otherwise, and how they can impact your abilities as interviewers or assessors. Put very simply, we're all biased. Whether we wish to admit them to ourselves or not, we all have conscious biases that favour certain groups over others. Ask yourself which individuals are likely to leave you with a strong favourable first impression and which will leave you with a less favourable view. Then ask yourself whether any of that is justifiable criteria for success in the role. It's also important to be aware of sources of unconscious bias, such as selective attention, confirmation bias, groupthink, priming. Without noticing, and despite your best intention, such things can undermine your ability to be objective and impartial. Now, it's not wrong to have these cognitive thinking errors, but it is important to ensure conscious action to mitigate against the risks. You are the people who live in the house and make sure it functions effectively. If you'd like to know more about this or anything else that we do, contact us through our website at perncandola.com. Thank you.